listener, and welcome to Book 6, Chapter 20 of Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. Today we bring you a bonus episode as we round out Book 6, 3 stories written from prompts generated by the Story Engine cards.
A master craftsman wants to conceal the dangers of a cursed masterpiece, and they will never forgive themselves. Unnatural Mediums. Written and read by Dot Moore. A few months ago, I submitted a collection of my pieces to be displayed in a local exhibit. It was a small, citywide exhibition, and they accepted anything from anyone, as long as you paid the entry fee. I know my art is not everyone's cup of tea, but I wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to display the work that makes me proud. I submitted the entry form early enough that they offered me a whole corner section with shelving to display. I realized with more space and enough time before the event, I could complete a new piece to reveal opening night. When I got home that afternoon and went to my studio, I pulled out a hunk of clay and stared at it for over an hour. I had nothing. Nada. Zilch. No thoughts, head empty, inspiration gone. I was furious with myself, and the frustrated rage only further doused my creative flame. It was time to get back to basics. The easiest way to rekindle my spark was to feed it dry material to inspire. I hit books. I read through every boring textbook from college and the century-specific art history books I collected via birthday or holiday gifts over the years. Again, nothing helped. I tried mashing clay into weird shapes. I tried different mediums. It was hopeless. I was hopeless. On my way home from meeting some friends for dinner a couple weeks before the exhibit, I came across a pop-up book stand. It was just a small table and some shelves stuffed with the most eclectic variety of books I'd seen from any library. As I scanned one of the shelves, a hunched old man shuffled around and we managed to startle each other. He cleared his throat and apologized for disturbing me and proceeded to ask if I was looking for anything in particular. I opted to press my luck and asked if he had any books about sculpting, claywork, or art in general. He closed his eyes with a light furrow to his brow and turned around without another word. I stood there for a moment, not knowing exactly how to respond, and I almost left before he came back from another shelf carrying a worn hardback book. He held it out to me with a short grumble and suggested that I review the 4th chapter on sculpting. I thanked him and pulled out my wallet, but he shook his head and shuffled off without another word. I thumbed through the first few pages before flipping to chapter 4. It seemed like an ordinary art book, but the 4th chapter was different. There were notes and scribbles in the margins, strange shapes and squiggles interlaced across the page. It was difficult to make sense of them, but they all flowed like water towards the center image. It was a beautifully ornate depiction of a feminine statue. I typically lean toward more abstract myself, but there was no denying the beauty in this piece. I checked the footer, and the artist was listed as unknown submission, which was a layered disappointment. There was no way to follow the artist, and they clearly didn't receive credit for their work. Well, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, right? I was struck by the creative bug, and there was no better cure for the itch to sculpt than simply trying it in my style. I couldn't stop once I'd started. I molded clay tirelessly for hours without realizing I'd worked through the night and into the morning. It was like some sort of trance. The curved shapes and inlays into the figure's bodice wove an intricate web of detail. I was hypnotized by my own work. I took a step back to admire it before gently positioning the piece in the kiln for firing. I added a few layers of glaze for some dimension and a pop of color, and after the 4th firing, it was finished. It was beautiful. I was stunned by how impressive it was that I completed such a masterpiece. I positioned the statuette on a pedestal in the center of my studio and again admired it lovingly, obsessively. Time passed in a blink. Before I realized, I had sat in my studio staring at my sculpture until late afternoon again. I rubbed my eyes and rolled my shoulders before shutting down the studio lights and kiln to leave. Several days passed in the same way. I'd get to my studio, admire the sculpture for hours, and leave for home completely drained of all my energy. I began having horrifically vivid nightmares after the first night. Every evening when my head hit the pillow, it was the same sequence of events in the dream. A slender, silhouetted figure would approach me with a single outstretched hand. It was inviting me to join it in the darkness. And every night, when I reached forward, my hand would turn to dust, and the rest of me would crumble to pieces. Finally, it was the day of the exhibit. I already moved all of my other pieces to the gallery, but I waited to move my masterpiece on its own to avoid any accidents. I packed it carefully and drove it over to the exhibit hall to set up. A few hours later, I was ready and dressed for the event. People started flowing through the doors, mostly friends and family of children that submitted their finger paintings and modeling clay pieces. As the night went on, more and more people came through the doors. It was truly an impressive turnout. I stood proudly in my small corner of the gallery, but as more people walked by my art, I noticed that they all had a strange expression of disgust. I tried not to show it, but I was crushed. I couldn't understand what they were so upset about, let alone how they couldn't appreciate the level of detail and complexity for a piece of art at this level of exhibit. The night ended, and I went home to have yet another nightmare, just like every other night. I woke with a startle and slowly sat myself up in bed. I stretched from another restless night of sleep and leaned over to reach for my phone. I checked a few socials and scrolled past a few posts before I noticed a tagged post from last night. It was a series of pictures from the gallery exhibit. I swiped through, looking to see if I'd been featured. To my horror, several of the pictures were of me and my sculpture, but it wasn't my sculpture. In its place was this grotesque heaping growth of clay with melting pustules and deformed features. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and just as I moved to set my phone down again, I noticed the stains and dusty clay. I wiped at the smears of dried clay covering my bed. I noticed more clay on the floor, but this time as footprints leading to and away from my bed, not my footprints. I shuffled to the edge of my bed, and as soon as my foot touched the floor, I felt something thick and wet wrap around my ankle. I screamed and fell to the floor, only to be met with the monstrosity I'd created waiting for me at the foot of my bed, reaching for me with a sinister, distorted grin. Author's note. Chris asked Wayne and I to give him a series of random numbers to pull cards from his prompt generator deck of cards. The intro of the story is what the cards read out. I was struggling with even just the inspiration of the prompt, so I asked my son what sort of story he'd write with the prompt given. He started by saying, well, first they'd need a pretty powerful spell book to deal with the curse. And I thought, dang, this kid is onto something. So I pressed him about the masterpiece part, and he immediately went to a statue. I loved the sculptor statue idea, so I asked him what the statue was of, and his response was, a vampire. I asked him what the vampire was doing in the statue, and he said he's hiding or stuck. Then we got ice cream, and the rest was for me to figure out. My 6-year-old's growing into an amazing storyteller. I hope you enjoyed.
My story prompt was, an unlucky artist wants to rise to the challenge of a forgery, but they will likely lose their life. Masterpiece. Written and read by Wayne Cole. Dear Jennifer, if you are reading this, I'm probably already dead. I don't know what you will have heard, but more than anyone, you deserve to know the truth. First off, I'm sorry for the things I said during our last fight. I didn't mean any of them. I just needed you to go because some very bad men were on their way over. I couldn't risk you being in my apartment when they arrived. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. I should probably start at the beginning. My astronomically bad luck is not natural. 14 years ago, I got the daughter of a very powerful man pregnant. I thought his power came strictly from wealth, but I was so very wrong. When I went to visit my then girlfriend one day, I was met by guards and a man in a robe who put a curse on me. I know that is a big secret to have kept from you, but I swear, until 4 months ago, I didn't know that I was a father. They didn't tell me why I was being banned from the house, and Victoria was homeschooled from that point on. Even after all this time, I recognized her instantly when she stepped through the doors of my art studio, flanked by guards. She must have seen something in my face, because she put her fingers to her lips and shushed me, and shook her head ever so slightly. The guards waited at the door while she approached me. I had been working on a landscape painting to use as an example for a class later in the week. In a loud voice, she told me that she had heard I was highly recommended, and that she would like to procure my services as a personal art teacher for her daughter who was about to turn 14. In a much softer voice, she apologized for not telling me, and swore that this was the only way she could think of to introduce us. She made me promise not to tell Jamie that I was her father. If the old man knew that I was in my daughter's life, he would have me killed. I give you my word, that was the only time I saw Victoria. From that point on, Jamie would be brought to the studio for her lessons by armed guards. They watched over us the entire time, never giving us a moment of privacy. Even so, I was just grateful for the time I had with my daughter. Jamie is such an amazing girl, so talented and far more intelligent than anyone gives her credit for. I was examining her drying painting after she left one of our sessions when I first noticed it. In the background of a park scene, I found myself and her mother holding hands, looking over what had to be a younger version of herself. I looked through her other works and found hidden messages in each of them. Without ever saying a word or letting her mask slip in the slightest, she was telling me that she knew I was her father. I felt a level of pride I hadn't previously known was even possible. I likewise started sending her messages through my own artwork. For 2 months, we spoke through the language of art, back and forth, sharing as much as we could without her guards ever knowing. Our actual words started to hide double meanings as we shared our lives with each other. All the while, she improved. She is a prodigy, and despite only meeting a few times a week, she quickly surpassed all of my other students. But she shares my biggest personality flaw: arrogance. We both thought we were so much smarter than the guards watching us. We became more brazen with our words and less careful in how we hid our messages within the art. Perhaps it was merely my curse of bad luck that led to their suspicion. Whatever it was, one of the guards caught on and confronted me at home one night. I'm not sure what I had expected would happen if I was caught, but blackmail had not even crossed my mind. He handed me a folder with detailed information about a rare painting he had been tasked with procuring for his employer's collection. One that had gone missing decades ago, and he had thus far failed to find. He made me a proposal and ensured that I knew I could not refuse. I was to create a forgery of this painting so good that his employer would not be able to tell the difference. If I did not make the attempt, he would reveal my secret, and his boss would have me killed. If my work failed to be mistaken for the original, he would tell his boss that I had sold him a forgery, and he would have me killed. If, however, I succeeded, he would keep my secret, split the money he had been given to procure the painting, and I would get to continue seeing my daughter. So you see, I really didn't have a choice. I had to go through with it. Deep down, though, my own arrogance was telling me that I could do it. It would be the hardest art task I had ever undertaken, but I knew that I could create an indistinguishable copy. A forensic lab could date the work, but if I was as good as I believed, there would be no reason to ever send it off for testing. It took me 3 tries to get it just right. Even then, every flaw stood out to me, not just my own, but flaws in the original that I had masterfully recreated. I was convinced that no one would ever be able to tell the difference just by looking at it. My forged authenticity report was just as masterful. I even guaranteed it to the thug when I turned the painting over to him. No matter how large my ego, though, there was that voice of self-doubt in the back of my head. I should have listened to it. He was the phone call I took while we ate dinner tonight. He told me that he and some friends were on their way over to pick me up. The old man wanted to talk to me, and if I wasn't in my apartment when they arrived, you would be their next visit. That was what really caused the expression on my face that you asked about. It was fear. Knowing I had very little time, I picked the fight. I made those horrible comments about your sister, knowing you would storm out. You have always been so protective of her, despite her poor life choices. I just had to judge her for things that are far less than what I've done in my own life. When you defended her, I doubled down on my comments. I needed you safely away, and I needed time to write this letter. I don't know what went wrong with the presentation of the painting. I don't know how I failed in my recreation. What I do know is that you deserve to know why. I'm just sorry that I failed so completely. I've let you down, and I've let my daughter down, the 2 people I love most in this world. They are knocking on the door now. Author's note. I love writing prompts and seeing what I can do with them. This one immediately gave me a handful of ideas. I thought about making it a space story, where the forgery was identities. Then I considered a time travel story, where the main character accidentally kills the artist who painted a work that his parents met over while it was on tour. He would then have to forge it so the painting could exist and he could be born. A few other ideas came to me, but in the end, I decided on this letter format, and from there, the story just wrote itself.
A damaged apprentice wants to rise to the challenge of an ambush, but it means taking on a debt they cannot pay. But the Bad Guys. Written and read by Chris Hussey. So tell me, Calabash, what is your answer? I looked at my student. He was sweaty and bloody, with tears of rage, pain, and indecision streaming down his face. He was, at this moment, facing a choice that would literally decide the direction of the rest of his life. And honestly, he was in no condition to make such a decision. And truth be told, it shouldn't have mattered to me. I was going to be dead soon, no matter what he chose. But I love this kid, and I'd trained him with the hope of not only passing on the knowledge, but also my legacy. I suppose I should explain how we got into this mess we found ourselves in. My name is Tantalos, Grand Master of the Urzen Order of Mizar Alcor. It's such a ridiculous mouthful. I was the last of my order up until 25 cycles ago. My brothers and sisters in the order were either hunted down or slain in ambush by an insane psychopath known as Fritz Ironleg. There's a lot to say about Fritz, but the important things to remember here is his lack of a moral compass and his vast array of mentally damaging but incredibly powerful cyberware. So, I was the last one until I found Calabash. Standard story, really. Lone remaining martial arts and psionics master finds street urchin. Lone remaining martial arts and psionics master trains street urchin. Street urchin struggles and rebels, but lone remaining martial arts and psionics master keeps the faith. Street urchin returns after taking a brief personal quest to find themselves and resumes training. Smash cut to an amazing montage of training, and Street Urchin now shows real promise to his master. The future and the order is being rebuilt. But as these stories always go, the brief personal quest put the Street Urchin in contact with mentally unstable, cybernetically enhanced, morally loose gangster. Said mentally unstable, cybernetically enhanced, morally loose gangster, who has been searching for the lone master all these years to finish what he started, finally has his first lead. Slowly but surely he closes in until he finds master and apprentice. A crippling and devastating ambush by him and his cronies causes damage across an entire city block as Fritz and company do their best to take both of us down. Like I said, pretty standard story. Which brings us to where we are right now. Well, almost. Fritz and I had a rather rough tussle, which left me lying on the street, bleeding from more places than I can reasonably assess. I'm staying alive by psionic force of will alone, but make no mistake, I will die soon. But I'm going out knowing that the cost Fritz had to pay is high. He didn't escape unscathed by any means, and the drain on his resources and damage to his own body is going to set him back to a level he might never recover from. In fact, I thought it was highly possible my apprentice could finish what I started, until Fritz pulled this little left turn. In the years in between our last tussle, Fritz had one of his arms turned into some ridiculous-looking energy weapon, which not only is highly illegal, but it's also incredibly destructive. Hence the destruction I mentioned earlier. Said arm was pointed at me. I was too broken to dodge it, and my head injuries were preventing any additional psionic actions against it. In essence, he had me dead to rights. But instead of delivering the killing blow, he's given Calabash a choice. A choice I don't want him to have to make. So tell me, Calabash, what is your answer? My master is broken. Fritz Ironleg has done what I thought impossible. He brought about the defeat of the one who saved me, the one who taught me everything I know now, the one who put me on a path towards the light rather than a lifetime running in the dark shadows of endless city streets on faraway worlds. The Ironleg has paid a heavy cost for this victory. His minions lie dead or broken, thanks to both my master and what he has taught me. Even Ironleg himself suffers. So much of his cyberware and enhancements are dented, snapped, and sparking. But all of this does not balance the debt done to my master. And now Ironleg puts a choice before me. He offers to spare my teacher if I surrender and pledge myself to him. I must take my abilities and use them for Ironleg's own gains, all for the life of my master. The choice seems easy. I should accept under false pretense and move against Ironleg when he lowers his guard. Surely he has no more tricks up his mechanical sleeves. I am fast and have the mental abilities to counter his circuits, code, and steel. I could reach Ironleg before he could react, ending his threat and saving my master's life. And yet Ironleg will expect me to reject the offer. I know some of his minions still live. They have taken their positions, waiting for me to move. They will be ready. I know I am fast, but even with my own injuries, am I fast enough? No. I know there is but one way. I will trust what my master has taught me. Ironleg may have caught us by surprise, but this is the moment I have trained for, and I will respond. I accept your offer. Spare my master, and I will join you. The media loves to paint the picture that anyone with extensive cybernetic enhancements eventually goes crazy from all the damage done to the body. What they don't tell you is the clarity of thought it brings. There's so much mental clutter from all the thoughts and anxieties racing in your head. You get a few brain mods, and suddenly, bam! You are thinking clearer and more broadly than ever before. And if you get the right mods, you can see angles and calculate outcomes and probabilities better than you could with just gray matter. Which is how I know Calabash is lying. Which is how I know Tintalos is too wounded to do anything. Which is how I know I've won. I've finally won. I appreciate the offer, Calabash. I do. I only wish I believed you'd actually be able to do it. It happens in a flash. Fritz spins his arm with a screech of metal and a shower of sparks toward Calabash. In an instant, the arm gun glows yellow. There's a sharp snap as the air around Fritz pops, releasing the energy beam, catching Calabash square in the chest and punching straight through. At least his death was painless. I feel the gut punch and heart crunch with the knowledge that my student has been killed by my nemesis. Training kicks in, and I hold the horror of it all for the moment as I try to unleash one last attack from my mind, because there's no way my body could do anything. I quickly learn my mind can't either. As my psyche reaches out, it hits a brick wall, and I feel new rivers of blood cascade from my nostrils and from one of my eyes as it bursts. With my last good eye, blurry from fluid and blood, I see Fritz turn back toward me. He's saying something and laughing, but I can't hear him. I realize my ears have burst too. I see his stupid gun arm come up and point at me. Damn. Author's note. So I liked the prompt. I felt pretty good about this prompt. And I guess I kind of wanted to do a story with some stakes, but also like a little bit of humor and just kind of a wild sort of gonzo nature to it. I wanted to also give the three viewpoints in this story and three distinct personalities of these three. And I also wanted to try something a little bit different. And this is one of the things I like about prompts and the challenge that they give me. I wanted to do something where the bad guys win, and just to see how that felt in writing it. And I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of appreciated the different perspective of it all. Hope you did too. Thanks. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Bedtime Stories by Ross Budgeon. Find him on YouTube at Ross Budgeon. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. For more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com or follow us on Instagram at bite_size_tales or on Blue Sky at bitesizedtales.bsky.social. We look forward to reading to you next time.